Yo, yo, what's going on, party people? Welcome to a brand new week and welcome to a brand new edition of what we like to call the Shifting the Culture podcast, where we talk about the different artists, different songs, events, and controversies that shape this world we know and love as hippity hippity hip hop. I am your host, the vegan you believe in, Conscious Kurt, aka the Professor in the Flesh, as always.
And this is Evil Genius, aka King Khan, live and direct once again. What's going on, Conscious Kurt, man? How you feeling, man? How you feeling this week?
I'm pretty good. It's the start of summer. I've been liking that vibe a little bit. And also, we have the NBA Finals coming up this Thursday after a very, very disappointing conference finals from both sides. But I am looking forward to seeing
Yeah,
Kyrie Irving go back to the finals for the first time in 6 years and against his former team.
yeah, it should be dope, man. Just sucks that really hasn't been the first. I'm sorry, the last round went by so fast that we haven't had basketball in a few days, and by the time the finals actually start, it's going to be like a whole week. So it's kind of getting boring a little bit. But I feel like this finals is actually going to be one of the best finals that we've had in years. I feel like it's gonna be a really competitive series, and there's a lot of storylines. Kyrie going back to Boston, Porzingis playing Dallas where he left, and him and Luca had some beef. And then also, what's up for grabs right now is the face of the NBA. Luca has, arguably been one of the best players in the league, top three in the league, like the last like 4 or 5 years. And Tatum also has been up there, been around, but hasn't gotten the job done. So whoever wins this finals is most likely going to be like the face moving forward for the NBA, at least for the next few years, with like LeBron, KD, and Curry, like kind of like on their way out. So I feel like that's what kind of was up for grabs in this final. So we'll see how it goes. And I'm loving the Kyrie redemption story, how he redeemed himself. How everybody was talking shit about him because of the vaccine and all the antics that were going on. But I'm glad to see that he's getting the respect that he deserves as one of the best players of all time. And it just kind of sucks that because of all the BS that was going on, that they left him off the 75 greatest players in favor of like Dame Lillard and some other players, which
What a
I
crock of
mess with Dame
shit.
Lillard, but Kyrie
What a
is
crock of
definitely way
shit.
better than Dame Lillard. It just the politics and whatnot, and because of that tweet that happened a few years ago, they kind of like I would say punished him in that way. But he definitely deserved to be in the top 75 players of all time.
Yeah, it's been great seeing Kyrie go on the run that he's been going on in these playoffs. And to think the Mavericks didn't even make the playoffs last year, and this year they're going to the finals. That's a redemption story and a turnaround if I've ever seen one. And yeah, just seeing like what Kyrie was going through these last few years, like especially when he went to Brooklyn, how that all went down with the whole vaccine thing and that whole team, like just in general being a bust, just seeing him like bounce back from all that to going back to the NBA Finals and going on the run he's been going on this year. You can't write a better story than that. And it's just great to see all the haters and all the people talking shit about him all these years have to eat their words. And it's also great to see Stephen A. Smith have to eat his words too. And I'm just hoping, fingers crossed, that he gets the job done and Dallas wins their second NBA title.
I feel like Dallas will take it in probably six. I'm just not sold on. I feel like Luka and Kyrie are better tandem than Tatum and Brown, and I feel like Kyrie's proven and Luka's been a pro since he's been like 15 years old. So and he's on another level right now. So we'll see what happens, but I feel like Dallas is gonna pull through and take it this year.
I hope they do, but I'm looking forward to seeing when it starts on Thursday night. And yeah, it'll be nice to have some basketball and some competitive basketball at that again. Because yeah, this
Yeah,
last round was not it.
yeah, it was pretty bad, but it is what it is. Sometimes that happens, man. Injuries and bad matchups, but the finals will be worth it. I think the finals will make up for it.
Let's get into what was a good conference finals real fast. This past week was actually the 22-year anniversary of that amazing, incredible conference finals between the Lakers and the Kings. And I know you remember that series very well from back in the day. And yeah, it was a series that really could have gone either way and maybe should have gone one way, but because of some questionable officiating, among other things, the Lakers ended up repeating that year. But regardless of that, that series was fucking nuts from start to finish. I think that was probably one of the best playoff series of all time. Definitely in the top five.
Definitely up there. I didn't really like how the way it ended because I felt like the Kings that year were the better team, and they just got there was a whole bunch of bad calls in that series
Game
that kind of took
six,
the tide in the
game
Lakers,
six was where it
especially
really got bad.
game six. Like I remember Bibby got slapped in the face by Kobe, and then they called a foul on Bibby,
Yeah, he
like
got
shit like that
elbowed.
was going on. Yeah, he got elbowed, and then they called a foul on Bibby, and that led to like the Lakers going on a run. But yeah, man, that series definitely the Kings were the better team. That was like Chris Webber, Peja Stojakovic. Who else was on that team? They had a squad. They had Turkaloo.
Oh
They
yeah, Turkoglu
had
was on that team.
what was that center's name who could shoot? Something Brad Miller, I think his name was the one that Shaq swung on at one time and almost decapitated him.
It's not really ringing a bell, but go
I
on.
think his name was Brad Miller. I think his name was Brad Miller. That team was squad. They had Bobby Jackson. They had a young Gerald Wallace. That team was pretty stacked, man. That and Mike Bibby was on that team. Yeah, that team was really good. That Kings team. They should have won the title that year, but the refs got in their way and the Lakers got to the finals. But I felt like the Kings were definitely the better team that year.
Yeah, a lot of people say that that 2002 Kings team was the best NBA team to never win a championship. And from the way their regular season went to them being the favorites that they were going into that series with the Lakers, I can definitely see that. The only other team I can maybe think of is that 2009 Cavs team. I remember they were really good too.
Like the Kings should have wrapped it up in like maybe 5 or 6 games, but that's when that remember that ball. I think it was game 3 or 4 when the ball like bounced out to Robert Ory for like this Hail Mary buzzer beater that he made, and that's what like I think
Game
tied up the
that was game
series.
4.
If I'm not
Game
mistaken.
4.
Yeah, it was game 4. If it wasn't for that, the Kings would have been up 3-1, and it would have been a different series. But things like that happen in the NBA where like one shot can change the series or one game. So, but that definitely would have been different if the Kings went up 3-1.
Yeah, that's why I say that series was so crazy with that shot at the buzzer that Robert Ory made in that game 4, and just game 6. Even though the ref bullshit got in the way, it was still a competitive game, and it went down pretty much to the end. And then game 7, hell, even game 7 went to fucking overtime.
Overtime, yeah, game 7 was good, but yeah, just the Lakers pulled it out, man. But definitely a great series though. One of the
Yeah,
best series ever.
great series in many ways. It looked like the Kings got robbed with the officiating, but it is what it is. What happened happened, and nothing we can do to change it.
Was this before or after like the? Remember when that referee in the NBA got locked up or got caught like messing with games in like the 2000s?
I think this was probably before that because I remember a few years later he like went out publicly and said that those officials were like specifically told to call that game in favor of the Lakers so that they could have a
Yeah,
game 7.
yeah. So that's what I remember correctly. Yeah. So this was before that. I think his name was Donahue or something. Donahue was something like that.
Yeah,
And
give
then
it.
he got caught up with he got caught up with as a referee like fixing games and whatnot. And this was before they that actually came out in public. So yeah, it kind of makes sense how bad this series and how blatant this series was, how rigged it was. Like it was bad.
Yeah, and that game 6, the Lakers shot 27 free throws in the fourth quarter.
That's ridiculous, bro. That's like some teams shoot that in a game, but in a quarter, like come on, bro.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
I even went back today to watch some of the highlights of that game, and there was this one point Chris Webber was being guarded by Robert Ory, and Robert Ory flopped. And you could clearly see that he flopped, but they still called it against Chris Webber. You could hear Bill Walton, now the late Bill Walton, rest in peace, on
R.I.P. Yeah,
commentary. Yeah, you could hear Bill Walton on commentary say, like, yo, that's a bullshit call. That's ridiculous.
yeah,
So yeah, when the commentators
yeah.
can
That's
see what's up,
wild.
when the commentators can see what's up and call out the bullshit, then yeah, there is some bullshit going on.
Yeah, and then, like it just sucks because people always every year people always say, "Oh, the NBA is rigged," or "This is the NBA is scripted," or "These are the two teams they won in the finals." Like you got to hear stuff like that because of that series and because of what came out with that ref. So it just put like a bad mark on the league and just like a black eye on the league that we don't need.
And in all honesty, looking back at it now, that series was the real NBA Finals that year.
Yeah, it was.
Because we all
Who did they
know,
destroy? Who did Lakers destroy in that finals? That was like the Nets. Was it
yeah,
the
it was,
Nets that year?
yeah, it was the Nets.
The Nets, yeah. The Nets were had no chance against prime Shaq, prime Kobe
Yeah, they
in that
swept them.
match.
Yeah, they swept them.
Yeah, I think I don't even remember watching that series because I know it was already over. There was no chance the Nets were going to beat them. The Kings were like the only team that had a chance to beat the Lakers, and they didn't make it, unfortunately. But yeah, there was no way the Nets were beating them that year.
Nah, not at all. But I did see some of the highlights of Summer Jam from last night. I saw some of them online from Method Man and Redman's performance, also Jadakiss, Doja Cat.
Big Daddy Kane, I saw too, was out there. Rakim.
Yeah, Big Daddy Kane still got it. Yeah, he still got it too. Good lineup from what I saw, but according to Method Man, the crowd was not it. He said that generation gap between his generation and the newer generation is wide as a motherfucker, and he just said he will not be doing any more summer jams.
Yeah, I don't blame him. Like if you look at that lineup, it's geared toward I would say kid. I would say people like in their 20s, like 25 and younger, like 30, maybe even 30 and younger if you want to go that far. But Method Man, we're talking about they were hot like like when the Red and Meth were
30 years.
like like on at their peak. It was like they came out in the 90s and then they really reached their peak like in the 2000s. So we're talking like 20 years. Like some of these kids weren't even born or they didn't even know enough to know who Red and Meth were. So that makes sense. And then as a performer, I've seen them live a couple of times, and the way that they perform is like they feed off the energy from the crowd. So if the crowd is not giving them the energy that they need, then the performance is going to suffer. And yeah, they just don't. I feel like it's kind of hard when you have a mixture of new artists and old artists. It's not going to work. It worked for the Hip Hop 50 because that was a different set of circumstance and that was a big celebration. But this, it's like the newer fans are not gonna gravitate to like the older music, and then the older fans that maybe came to see out some of the came to see some of the older acts are not gonna connect really with like the newer acts. So it's kind of like a tough situation. I felt like they kind of I know that what they were trying to do, they're trying to pay tribute to like
Cater to
Mystic
everybody.
and then cater to like some of the old school heads because that's where hip hop originated. But they should have had like a 2 day festival. Maybe one day is like the old school heads, and then maybe like the Sunday or whatever is like for like the newer school up and comers out of New York or whatnot. So I felt like that would probably be a better idea. But yes, like having Red and Meth randomly in the middle of like Doja Cat, Sexy Red, and some of these other performers, like it just doesn't make sense. It's not the same type of crowd. It's not this, even if it's like a newer act, it's not like the same type of music compared to like what Red and Meth used to put out. So I could see why they feel that way.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I said I wanted to go, but considering how they described everything, I probably wouldn't have enjoyed it as much with that kind of crowd.
Yeah, you
I
probably
think that
wouldn't have. Yeah, you probably would have been fell flat. So yeah, it is what it is. But
Yeah, and speaking of the generation gap between the old school and the new school, Eminem dropped his latest single and video for his latest single called Whodini this past Friday. And the one line that's been getting a lot of attention ever since the song dropped was a line referencing Megan Thee Stallion's foot shooting incident from a few years ago, where basically in the line, Eminem says, if I were to ask Megan Thee Stallion for a collab, I wonder if I would have shot at her feet.
wow, yeah, I heard that. It's typical Eminem. Like how what he comes out with like those without me songs, those wacky songs that kind of makes fun of like pop culture and celebrities, and it's, the same formula that he's used in the past, just more modernized, I would say.
Yeah, honestly, I like the video. The video was a nice throwback to those like without me, real Slim Shady days. Yeah, I like the entire vibe of it.
Yeah.
He had a bunch of cameos. It was really creative. Yeah, I fucked with the whole project.
Well, yeah. Well, it was not a project; it was just a single. But yeah, it was good to see that Eminem is back. He did his thing like he always does. I feel like he's kind of setting everybody up because this is what he normally does. He'll come up with like one of these wacky songs, and then like the follow up song is going to be something like a little bit more serious or more intense. So we'll see what comes out of it. Looking forward to hearing what else he has. I don't really pay too much attention to these wacky songs from Eminem. I'd rather listen to like the more in depth and more artistic songs that he puts together. So this is it does serve a purpose of getting the name out there and letting people know that Eminem is coming back out. So it does the purpose of that of starting a buzz and getting people to talk about Eminem. But I'm looking forward to more of like what some of the other singles and what's going to coming forward.
Yeah, it's so crazy from like everything he said in that whole song. The main thing that everybody's all pissed off about and up in arms about is the whole Megan Thee Stallion line, talking about how he's targeting black women. He's targeting black women who've been through trauma. He should be canceled. He's insensitive. All these other different takes. And it just shows you how fucking sensitive and butthurt this younger generation can be sometimes. I try to be understanding and I try to be as empathetic as possible, but just some of these takes I see from them and some of the stances on it and whatnot, it's just such a fucking turnoff. And it just puts me in the mood to write a diss song about them.
Yeah, this generation definitely way softer than the generation before. Like I don't feel like he's targeting black women or anything like that. This is what he does. He's came out Mariah, mad different artists in his songs in the past, Britney Spears, like the list goes on and on.
And
So
bro, it's not even the fact that he targets like other celebrities. He dissed his own fucking kids in the song. He said, "Fuck my daughters too. They're both brats."
yeah, so it's like that's just the
He
way
disses, he dissed Dre. He dissed everybody on the damn song, and they're gonna get up in arms about him dissing Megan Thee Stallion, but not him saying "fuck you" to his own kids.
yeah, just people just searching, pick and choose what to complain about. And yeah, I just let it. It's just Eminem. And he didn't say anything really controversial. He said like a slick line that could be taken as funny, or you could take it how you want it. But I don't think it was that serious, to be honest with you. And honestly, that whole situation with the Megan Thee Stallion, I know Tory Lanez got locked up, but nobody really knows what really happened. So we'll see what happens with that situation. But I don't feel like that situation is done.
Yeah, I did like that one line he spit talking about I'm listening to R. Kelly's favorite group, the Black Eyed Peas. That line was mad
Yeah,
funny.
yeah. It's typical
Yes,
Eminem.
yeah, that's what I was saying. Is that this is like the shit that Eminem did back in the 2000s, where he would have singles like this that would like get people up in arms, get people accusing him of like being homophobic back then, and now people today are accusing him of hating black women. So yeah, just a cycle of Eminem's career.
Yeah, it's not. It's just society's changed and they're not used to his antics. So he's got they'll be all right.
Yeah, I think Justin Bieber said that Eminem doesn't understand modern rap.
I mean, we'll see. I'm gonna let him pass because I've seen this happen before, and then he'll come out with a song like "Clean Up My Closet" or something like that right after. So let's just wait and see. I'm not putting too much stock into this single. This is just a single that he normally puts out to kind of gain attention for the project, and we'll see where it goes from here. But I'm not. It's not a song that I'm gonna really go back to and listen to all the time or anything like that. Like some of the other wacky songs he's put out over the years, but yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing what else he comes out with from here. But he normally gets the wacky commercial song out the way first, and then he goes into the theme of the project.
It was so funny. I put up a post the other day on Facebook where like this one person was describing how offensive that line he spit about Megan Thee Stallion was, talking about how Eminem's washed up, he sucks, he's a 60-year-old has been, and all this other jazz. And at the end of the post, they put up a poll of who's the better rapper between Eminem and Megan Thee Stallion, and Eminem got 97% of the votes.
Yeah, yeah. There's
Fuck out of
no
here.
question, man.
Fuck
There's no
out.
competition between.
Megan Thee Stallion comparing her to Eminem lyrically. Fuck out of my face.
Yeah, yeah. People are funny. They just go off with these wacky songs, and they form their opinion off of that instead of listening to the whole project or the whole body of work. So, like I said, I'm gonna hold off on judgment now until I see the project, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, because Megan Thee Stallion, I would compare in a way, I would call her the female P. Diddy in the sense where I look at her more as a mogul than an actual artist.
I don't think she's really a mogul though. She hasn't really started
But
labels or fashion
you know
line
what
or
I
anything
mean?
like that.
You know what I mean? She's like independent, and I don't really think her music is what makes her stand out. I think it's more probably her look and her performance that probably makes her stand out.
Yeah, I would say so. But I feel like out of all the female rappers, she's actually one of the better ones. She actually like when she wants to spit and not when she's not doing like the commercial songs, she could actually rap compared to some of the all the females that are out. And she's she's been doing it for a while now. So I feel like she's one of the better female artists that have been out. I would say.
Yeah, if you had to do a Mount Rushmore for female rappers for the modern era, I would say it's definitely her, Doja Cat, Cardi, and Nicki. Megan isn't really my cup of tea per se, but I do respect her hustle. She definitely has creative videos also. I can see her being a good performer from what I've seen of like certain performances of her. So yeah, I'll definitely give her those flowers, but she's not fucking with Eminem lyrically, not even close.
Nah, she's not. That's not even the right type of artist. Not the same similar type of artist anyway. So you can't really make that type of comparison. So I was like really a dumb poll or a dumb question to put out there.
And even somebody left under the comment of the post that Megan's 100,000 times the rapper Eminem will ever be. I just wanted to laugh so hard when I saw that comment. I just wanted to laugh.
Yeah, you just gotta ignore it. Just laugh and keep it moving. You just don't pay things like that any attention.
Yeah, but it just goes to show you that if Eminem's getting people that riled up, he's doing his job.
And that's what he does. He got he did what he was supposed to do with his single. It did what it was supposed to do.
Yeah, and actually, Megan Thee Stallion's concert got postponed, the one that was supposed to be here in town over the weekend because of some water situation.
Yeah, there was like a water main break, I think on Friday, that where there was like no water like in downtown Atlanta, which where the concert was. So it makes sense if you can't have a concert where there's no water, people can't use the bathroom. You know how it is when there's no water in a building. Shouts out to Mike's wedding, but yeah, that's
Oh
definitely not. You
shit!
don't want to have a concert where yeah, you don't
Oh
want to have a
shit!
concert. Yeah, you don't want to have a concert where there's no running water. People can't use the bathroom. It's just going to be a mess and a nightmare, and just uncomfortable for a lot of people. So it's just best to call it. Once everything gets fixed and whatnot, and just reschedule the concert for another time. I know this is probably one of her biggest venues or biggest markets that she was going to perform at, which sucks. But I think she had like a couple of shows, but there's no water. There's nothing really that you can do. It's out
She's
of her hands, really.
she sold out the Garden recently, and she actually brought out Cardi B and Glorilla for the performance too.
Yeah, I saw that.
Okay, so let's move on to our next topic. As two more reference tracks were leaked from Drake over these past few days, and those two reference tracks that were leaked were Mob Ties and also Ratchet Happy Birthday from listening to both versions of each song, I gotta say that yeah, that you could definitely tell that Drake got all of it from that person, and that he doesn't do as much by himself as maybe people thought that he did by himself.
Yeah, there's nothing. Well, to me, I heard rumors and rumblings about this. We even heard about this when Drake and Meek Mill were going back and forth. How Meek Mill called him out for having ghostwriters. So this is just proof that yeah, he does use ghostwriters and he does get reference tracks. Well, I don't really have a problem with the reference tracks because I know a lot of artists, especially big artists like Beyonce and a lot of other big acts, pop artists. They use other writers, other producers because it's hard for them to come up with different concepts. They're more, I would say, good at performing rather than coming up with the actual. Being creative and coming up with the actual, song themselves. Not to say that they can't do it themselves, but they don't have time, or they seem to hurry up and turn around albums and projects as quick as possible. So they don't have the time to sit there and kind of like come up with new ideas and songs. So I'm not really, mad at that. What I am concerned about is that you cannot be considered the top hip hop artist and use ghostwriters or use reference tracks. I've never heard Biggie, Nas, or even Jay Z, Lil Wayne, even people like that using reference tracks. And then like that one song, the Mob Ties, pretty much sound like word for word, like with the exception of a few words, it's pretty much the same damn song, but just performed by Drake rather than Vori. So it's like how much credibility do you have as like being the number one rap or the number one hip hop artist in the world? You can't. That definitely automatically takes you out of the top spot as far as being the best rapper of this generation if you don't even write your own shit. That's just how I see it. You can't just be, yeah, you could be up there as one of the best rappers of all time, but to be the best, this is where the tiebreaker comes in, and whoever writes their shit or comes up with their shit on their own should get the nod versus somebody who writes, or I mean who gets people to write the stuff for them.
Yeah, I do look at a lot of artists differently when I find out that they don't really write their own shit, or at least a majority of their own shit. And in a situation like this, while Drake I can definitely rank as one of the best, at least of this generation, but with that aside, I definitely have to say that he loses a lot of points because of this. It's okay to have like some help here and there. It's okay to have somebody feed you a line here and there, but to have song after song after song, like a song you pretty much copied from someone else, yeah, you don't get those gold points as heavy as somebody who came up with it on their own. I'm sorry, you don't.
Yeah, like Mob Ties is one of the biggest tracks, and that was an important track because this was after the Pusha T and Drake beef, and this was that on that Scorpio album, which kind of helped Drake bounce back after taking a loss. So that track was important, and then to know that that track was a reference track that he didn't really come up with the concept, that somebody pretty much laid everything out for him, and then he just went and performed it and changed some of the words around, a couple words around. Like it just, I don't know, in my eyes, it just loses a lot of credibility. And that was one of my favorite Drake songs that's come out within the last within the last 10 years. That's probably one of my favorite songs from him. And to hear that was a reference track, yeah, it just makes me put him in a different box.
Yeah, I think we've all kind of soured on Drake a lot over these last few months, and this is another reason why, I guess. But this is more for a musical reason as opposed to personal reasons. But it is what it is, man. I mean, this isn't necessarily like a Milli Vanilli type situation, but just when certain people, when you find out that they're not as hands on with their material as you may have thought they were, yeah, it does definitely kind of make you look at them differently in that sense, and maybe not think as highly of their music too.
Yeah, let's be real. Honestly, man, like we've said this before, like Drake's music over the last few years is not the same. I don't know what happened, but ever since I would say maybe like a year after that Pusha T beef, when was that? Like 20 what?
2018, but
So like
2018,
2018.
but I'll be honest, I was starting to get sick of him even before that. Like I can remember probably 2015 is when I started to kind of like fall out of him.
Yeah, he wasn't the same since like 20 since that beef that kind of like left a stain on his mark, and I don't think he's really recovered. But then this latest beef has brought him down like a whole another notch. Like now everybody sees like through a lot of his antics and things that he does. But yeah, at that time, this is kind of like the year, like 2019. I would say that's when I started like not really liking his music as much, and I felt like it's not hitting the same as it used to. Like especially like the major singles, like they weren't hitting the same. They weren't resonating with me as much, and I felt like they weren't as personal as like some of his earlier works, like the So Far Gone, Take Cares, those type of albums. I felt like those were more like I would say more creative and more like you could tell that they were you worked a little bit longer on those records versus now like there's like no feeling, there's no soul to those songs, those other records. So it's kind of like how I feel about it.
Maybe it's because of the fact that he might be burnt out because of all the years of constantly putting shit out and never taking a break. Maybe that's the reason why it's sounding the way it is now.
Yeah, it's just people are always gonna get sick of you no matter what. There's always gonna be somebody new or something new that comes out that people are gonna gravitate to, and we've talked about this before. Like he never took a break. He just constantly dropping music. He doesn't have time to like really experience life and to come up with different sounds and be more original. He's just jumping on to the next wave and trying to copy their vibe and their style and incorporate it into his music instead of like
Sexy Red.
going away. Exactly, with the sexy red thing, like just go away for a little while and live life and come up with different concepts or different things to talk about. Like he felt like he stayed the same while everybody's growing up. His fans have grown up that have been with him since the blog days. He hasn't grown up. His music kind of stayed for that same target audience. He hasn't like evolved as his fan base has grown older. He's kind of like stayed in that same pocket.
I was kind of like in my college years, more or less, when Drake first came out, like in 2009, like in my early 20s. And now that I'm like a 38-year-old man and I listen to Drake's music, it feels like Drake still raps like he's in his early 20s. Like he raps about shit that like a kid in his early 20s would be doing.
Yeah, like just I don't know. I'm just in a different point in my life where it just doesn't resonate with me anymore. Like I'm on a different type of time. You don't hear any personal songs from him talking about his life and things like that. It's always like generic shit like about women and things like that. But it's like nothing personal, nothing deep comes from his music. So I just after a while you kind of like disconnect with the artist. You don't connect with them the same.
Yeah, and he just has like in wrestling terms, go away heat, where you're just kind of just sick of seeing him and you're just sick of like having him around so much, and you just kind of want him to disappear for a while so you can maybe miss him a little bit, and then when he comes
Yeah,
back, whenever
exactly.
that is, it'll be fresh.
Exactly. But he hasn't done that. And now it's to the point where he's being forced to take a break. Like I feel like he needs to take a break for a while, let this Kendrick stuff settle down and then come back in a little while. But he shouldn't be coming back taking jabs at Kendrick. He needs to come back and just make music like, that party music, the kind of music that he likes to make. But no, he can't come back and try to like throw jabs at Kendrick or start reignite beef and things like that. Nah, that's not the right approach.
Yeah, but speaking of beefs, let's get into our next topic. As Ice Cube was performing at the California Roots Festival last week for Memorial Day weekend, he was talking about how people are telling him that Nas's Ether is the best diss ever, and also Tupac's Hit 'Em Up is the best diss ever, and also most recently, Not Like Us from Kendrick is the best diss ever. And he went on to say that he loves Nas, he loves Tupac, but both of those songs, respectively, are not the best diss ever. And he said that Not Like Us might be, but overall, the best diss ever, the best diss of all time is his No Vaseline that was directed at NWA and Jerry Heller back in 91. And this is basically what he had to say before he performed the song. No Vaseline is the best song in the history of hip hop. I'll tell you why. One MC, myself. I took out four motherfuckers and the manager. You can't beat that. And with that description, he has a point because Ice Cube, he wasn't dissing just one person. He was literally dissing five people and five people he used to roll with and like just broke up from. And yeah, that was like the first real, like original hard ass diss, like what we have become accustomed to today. I feel like that one was like the first real one, like where you really felt like he got the other people he was dissing good. And there was like nothing that they could say or do to counter that.
Yeah, definitely set the bar as far as diss songs. That was probably the I would say like the bar or the standard to kind of like compare to up until Tupac's Hit 'Em Up came out. I'm sorry, man. Like I understand Ice Cube, for saying what he said as having more Vaseline as the best diss song. Because obviously you should feel that way. If you come out with something, you should feel like you're the best at whatever that you do, and your version should be the best. That's how it should feel. But I feel like Hit 'Em Up is the most disrespectful and most blunt, flagrant diss track of all time. Like just like the way it starts, the stuff that Pac says, and then even he threw his goons. He let the Outlaws, throw some jabs in there, and at the end, him just talking all of his shit. At the end of that song, it's just I don't know, man. That's just like that. This song is like a whole nother level. For him saying that's why I fucked your bitch, like as a first line, you fat motherfucker. Like I don't think it gets any more disrespectful than that. But definitely I would say no Vaseline up until like what 97, 98 when I mean like when 96 when that Hit 'Em Up came out.
Yeah,
I would
96.
say up
Yeah.
until yeah, I would say up until 96, I would say no Vaseline probably was the best diss song up until that point.
Yeah, it's hard to say, really. I think he definitely has a case for it, and I understand why he would say that because it's fucking his song that he made himself. But fuck, as far as saying it's the best ever, that's definitely a good fucking question.
I got Hit 'Em Up there. I feel like just disrespectful on so many levels. It's personal. He even goes at the crew. He even throws shots at Mob Deep, Lil C's, Puffy. Like everybody got it.
All of New York, yeah, all of New York. He got,
Junior Mafia, Nas. He even threw some jabs at like everybody got it in that Hit 'Em Up song, man.
and even L, when he was on the show a few weeks ago, was saying the same thing that it wasn't even just a good diss song; it was just a good song. Period. Where like anytime people play it now, they fucking lose their minds.
Yeah, the beat was dope. The hook was dope, and the stuff that they said is people remember those lines, those bars that he spit in that song, and how disrespectful it is. And yeah, it's just a disrespectful diss track, man. And it when you look at diss tracks, that's what you can compare it to. That's probably why people said that this Kendrick and Drake wasn't, as good as the past piece because of the level of disrespect that Hit 'Em Up was. Like nothing really could compare to that song as far as being, disrespectful.
I see. Yeah, I see what you mean. But other diss tracks, I think that were also good that probably don't get enough credit. One I'll bring up is Takeover, especially considering the fact that he performed it at SummerJam and like put that picture of Prodigy in like a tutu or whatever the fuck it was on the screen.
Yeah,
Yeah, that
Summer Jams. Yeah, Summer Jam
shit was
stage. Yeah,
hard body, man. Yeah, that shit was hard body.
yeah. Takeover is definitely up there. Ether
Obviously,
is up
Ether.
there.
Yeah, Ether goes without saying. And also, honestly, the disses that D Block did to 50 when they were beefing with 50 back in like the mid 2000s, those were also
Yeah,
dope.
those were they weren't commercially big, but the Sorry Miss Jackson or there was a couple other ones. I can't remember. There was I think
Problem
Shootouts,
Child, Problem Child.
Problem Child. That was probably my favorite, and then the Checkmate by Jadakiss was another good one. But yeah, D Block destroyed G Unit during that run.
And also there was that song, Maybe If I Sing from Chic. Yo, that song was mad funny.
Yeah,
Maybe
that
if I
was good.
sing, I'll be rich. Maybe if I rat on you, I'll be rich. Maybe if I
Oh,
cross
I
over, I'll
forgot.
be rich.
My bad, not to cut you off, but another disrespectful song that we got to give props to G Unit is that Ja Rule diss "I Smell Pussy."
Oh
It was one
shit.
of the funniest diss songs ever. That was another honorable mention. That definitely should be in the top 10 all time. That was one of my. That was a classic diss track. Is that you, child? I smell
Is that
pussy.
you,
Is that you,
Irv?
Irv? you know, that whole song was disrespectful and funny as hell.
Yeah, it's so crazy how like 50 just derailed all of Ja Rule's momentum. Because I remember that year before, Ja Rule was white hot. He was on every song, he was on every feature. And then when 50 came out and 50 blew up, it was a wrap.
Yeah, he made fun of him of doing that certain style with the singing and rapping, and then 50 did the same thing
Yeah, he did.
after he after he destroyed his career. So it was funny, but that song was definitely disrespectful as well.
Also, another good diss was the grandfather rap from Eminem to Benzino. Yeah, he fucking ate his ass up and left nothing left.
Didn't he have another one called "Nailing the Coffin" or something
That's
like
the one I'm
that?
talking about. Yeah, that's the one.
Oh, okay, man. So maybe it's just a different name, but yeah, that's the one I remember. That one was dope.
I remember Ice Cube getting dissed by Common back in the 90s. That song, The Bitch in You. I remember that being good too.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. Pretty much a big part of what hip hop was built on and how it became
Oh, we
popular
forgot
was
the
because of diss tracks.
yeah, we also forgot that Pusha T son the story I added on. Remember that one?
Yeah, I remember, but also the infrared one from Daytona too.
Oh yeah, yeah, that one was another good
Was
one.
that one was also fire. Whether you think No Vaseline is the best diss track or not, that's your opinion, but it's definitely in the top five. I don't think you can debate that.
Yeah, it's definitely up there. Definitely set a precedent for what some of the songs that we hear today.
Yeah, just how NWA set the precedent for gangster rap, Ice Cube's No Vaseline set the precedent for diss tracks.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes, but before we get into our anniversaries, let's get into one more topic real fast. As Pink Pantheriss recently was doing an interview with ABC, and she went on to say that songs don't need to be really any longer than 2 minutes and 30 seconds. And I have to say that as an artist myself, I do think there is some weight to what she said because I have the opinion that if you can say what you need to say in two verses and a hook and it doesn't go any longer than 2 minutes or however long it is, then you don't really need to force anything else. If you can say what you need to say in a short amount of time and it gets the point across effectively, then you're good. I don't think there is a need to stretch shit out for 5 minutes, 6 minutes, or however long it is. Sometimes, in many cases, and I have to agree with her on this, less is more.
I kind of feel the opposite on this, man. I feel like this generation, they're kind of like make songs for like to go viral or for like TikTok or social media. And I feel like when you have a song that's like 2 minutes and 30 seconds, it can be a good song and you can get, your point across. But I feel like when we're talking about like a song that's gonna withstand like the test of time, that's gonna be timeless or is gonna you're gonna listen to maybe 20, 30 years later, those 2 minutes and 30 second songs are not gonna last. They're not gonna hold up. Yeah, they might be
Whoa, wait a
cool. They might
minute.
be cool for now, but I don't feel like years down the line, a lot of the music that's like the TikTok music, I would say, is not gonna hold up because. I feel like it doesn't have like the same like there is missing like a lot of the times these short songs there's missing something from the song, and I feel like their songs are like kind of like a cookie cutter, and they just put the song out, slap everything together and put it out, and they don't take the time to be put like the effort into it and put like your soul and have the song have a meaning or to have a message. And I feel like it's hard to get that done in a 2 minute and 30 second song. I feel like songs should be anywhere between 3 to 4 minutes, sometimes five if it's like a certain track. But when I was growing up, a lot of the songs, especially rap songs, they all had three verses and a chorus. So automatically the songs were at least 3 to 4 minutes long, 3 minutes and 30 seconds at least. This 2 minutes and 30 seconds, it's like by the time they get to rapping, you're already 1 minute in, and then they have a verse, the chorus, and the song is over. Like I don't feel like that's long enough for you to kind of like connect with the artist and feel like what they were feeling when they were making that song. That's just me how I look at it, but I just feel like the 2 minutes and 30 seconds is way too short.
I get it, but I'll give you one example of a group that consistently had short songs that didn't really go any longer than 3 minutes or so. Linkin Park. Most of Linkin Park's songs, even their biggest hits, most of them have been like maybe 3 minutes, 3 minutes, 15 seconds tops. And those songs are still classics, even though they are relatively short. I remember the one time they had a song that was like 5 minutes and change. I was in shock. I was like, what the fuck? Since when does Linkin Park make songs that are longer than 3 minutes? What the
Yeah,
fuck is the
I
world
get
coming
that.
to?
Certain genres you can get away with that, like reggae dancehall. A lot of those reggae songs, they're like a couple of minutes long, and they just loop on or play like the good part. And you're talking about more like alternative, rock type of band. I'm talking about hip hop artists or like R&B acts. What songs or groups that consistently put out songs that short, who are still around or still considered one of the best ever? Can you can't even name a group or an artist.
I just feel that if you can like really say what you need to say effectively in that 2 minutes and 30 seconds or 3 minutes or however long it is, then it's cool. As long as it gets the point across and people are jamming to it and people are feeling it, you don't need to force any more on there than needs to be on there.
I feel you. There are instances where, yeah, there are exceptions where you can't. There's nothing wrong with making a song that's 2 minutes and 30 seconds, but to make like every single song that you put out that long, like I don't feel like that's doable. And there are instances where the songs you can get a lot in within 2 minutes and 30 seconds. There are some instances like there's a track.
Isn't Rewind from Nas no longer than 3 minutes?
That was the song I was actually trying to look, but I was trying to confirm how long it was. So that's a dope track. It covers a lot and it's very creative because it tells a story in reverse from beginning to end. So that was an exception. But how many other Nas songs or any other than Jay Z's PSA, which I think was a short song, which is kind of like an interlude, to be honest with you. That was like just a little bit under 3 minutes. That song, and that was a dope song as well.
Even on the King's Diseases, a lot of the songs on King's Diseases I remember not being that long too.
Yeah, I know. I get it. The people's attention span is a lot shorter these days. So I get it. Why some artists feel like a shorter song is necessary. But to me, as a fan of music, I feel like those songs you can get away with it here and there with a short song, but it's not gonna last this test of time. Like I feel like we're just like in a transition period where people are just making music just to appease social media to go viral on like say TikTok or whatnot. They're not thinking about 5, 10 years from now, is this song going to ring off still? Or is it just something that's just hot for the moment? And I feel like a lot of these songs that are so short are only hot for the moment. They're not going to really, in 10, 15, 20 years from now, they're not going to hit the same. That's just how I see it. They're not as detailed, they're not as in depth, and they don't have as that feeling behind them as like these longer songs.
I get that part of it too, but I guess only time will tell. But I see Pink Pantheriss is really tight with Ice Spice. I see them. I saw like Ice Spice like in her video and all that. So I'm
Yeah, they done music together. Pink Panthers is like a DJ slash artist in the UK or whatnot. So yeah, she I understand her vibe. Songs need to be short because it's like more party songs and things like that. So it's kind of goes back to my reference to the Jamaican dancehall culture. how a lot of those songs are short. But I'm just talking about as hip hop. I feel like songs should be at least 3 to 4 minutes if you're having three verses and a hook and a chorus.
Hell, in some cases, you can get off with doing just two verses and maybe like something in between. If you could say what you need to say in two verses and you don't really want to force a third verse when you don't really have as much to say, then don't force the third verse. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, I feel you don't have to force it, but I'm talking about like the greatest artists. They don't make short songs like that. As far as I see it, the songs are pretty much longer, or pretty long. Not pretty long, but they're longer than 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
I got you, but let's get into some of our anniversaries real fast. As this past week marked the 37-year anniversary of LL Cool J's album Bad, which stood for Bigger and Deffer. And this is pretty much what established LL Cool J is the LL Cool J we would go on to know as the years went on. This is pretty much his like crossover album. And the two crossover hits from this album that really made him a household name were Bad, the title track, and also the very first hip hop love song, I Need Love. And obviously, that format would go on to bring him great success in later years, and also other artists great success, such as Fabulous, Ja Rule, Drake, among other people. And yeah, it's crazy. LL Cool J was the very first one to really take that formula and like really make it work for him, and like really make him cross over in a way he never probably would have otherwise.
Yeah, definitely. There's a reason why Elo is respected by, the biggest artists to this day, and a lot of people reference him, as far as one of their favorite artists growing up, because he definitely, impacted the culture, his style, the way he rhymed, and one thing I respect about Elo, he always reinvented himself. Year after, he will come back, drop an album, and then, reinvent himself for a few years later, come back with a different style. So that's what I always respected about him, and definitely one of the pioneers in pioneering and making it popular to do the hip hop love songs, which like you said, is something that's still followed today by a lot of artists, and it's a formula that works, and it appeals to a bigger audience, not just to the men but also to the females as well. So definitely shouts out to LL for being a pioneer and helping hip hop, bring hip hop to where it is right now. But yeah, definitely his fashion sense, definitely helped out along with Run DMC. At that time, it helped bring fashion and hip hop together, and it meshed so well. And then you can see that to this day that people are still associate fashion with hip hop to this day. So he definitely set a trend, and people still follow it till today.
Also started Fubu.
Yeah, definitely started his clothing line of Fubu as well, which is dope.
Think about the fact that back in 1987, how uncool it probably would have looked as on paper to do a hip hop song about a girl, about loving your girl, about being there for your girl, and like putting your jacket over a puddle so she could walk over it. Imagine how much flack he probably got for that initially when he came up with the idea. But he was willing to take the risk and deal with whatever criticism or whatever haters were going to come along the way from that. And the shit paid off perfectly. That track is mad fire. I'm not gonna say it's my favorite track of his, but that track is mad fire. I remember Jagged Edge used it to do the Promise remix a couple years later.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that track was mad fire, and I respect the fact that he was like willing to step out of the box and take that risk, and yeah, just not do what everybody else is doing and try something else that was different and see how it would pay off. And that's what I liked about that era of hip hop. People back then, I feel like were more risk takers.
Yeah, and a lot of people today, they're like, such as Drake, they still stay in the same box. They don't try anything new, anything different, or they're not creative.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head when you said that LL Cool J always reinvented himself. He was relevant in the 80s, he was relevant in the 90s, and he was also relevant in the 2000s. I can't even think of any other rapper besides him who was able to even pull that off. Rakim and KRS-One had runs in the 90s. They've had songs and they had songs in the 2000s. I can't really call them hits like that. But yeah, LL Cool
Nah.
J, I think he's like really the only one of those like main rappers from the 80s who had runs in like multiple decades afterwards. And that shit's
Yeah,
saying a
he even
lot.
dropped the album last year. He dropped the album. So Yeah, man, just LL Cool J, man. These type of artists, they it's hard to stay in hip hop for more than 10 years, and for him to be what 30, 40 years later, he's still around, out and about, still performing, still putting out music. It's just dope to see because some artists they only last for they come out with a couple albums and then you never hear from them again. He puts albums out. Sometimes they hit, sometimes they don't work, and then he comes back, takes the feedback and criticism, and then comes out with another album that's better. So you got to give him props, and that's why considered a legend because he reinvents himself and he continues to push the culture forward.
Oh, definitely. And with this album, he had two main singles that catered to everybody. He had Bad for the Men and I Need Love for the Women. And yo, on Bad, he fucking bodies it. He has four verses, not even just three verses. He has four verses on Bad, and he kills all four of them.
One of the greatest of all time, man. Should be respected.
Yeah, and also this was only the fourth hip hop album to go platinum.
Did it go platinum right away, or it took like years later platinum?
I don't know how long it took for it to go platinum, but it was only the fourth hip hop album ever to go platinum.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so shout out to LL Cool J for that classic piece of work. There's other tracks on the album that are good too, besides the two main singles, but obviously those are what people mainly remember from it.
Yeah, and this is a 40, album that's like 30, 40 years old, so it's
Yeah,
gonna
his
be
album
hard
is pretty much
to.
as old as I am.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So
Yeah, the breakthrough, Get Down. There were a few other tracks on it that were good, but yeah, those two main singles are what really put it over the top. All right, but let's move on to our next anniversary. Is 1 year later, we had the release of Boogie Down Productions' second album, By All Means Necessary. And this album would come off the heels of the murder of Scott LaRock, and you could definitely feel that loss on this album, although he was a part of the making of it, or at least the early stages of it. But I have to say, from going back to listen to this album today, yo, incredible. This is like pretty much one of those first real socially conscious albums that would like be like the prelude to like the Omatics and the Midnight Marauders and all those kind of albums that would be popular in the mid 90s. By All Means Necessary is like one of those first albums like to really, start that trend. Because yeah, KRS-One was calling out a lot of shit on this album, from government corruption, the crack epidemic, and how, like, the doctors are really the real drug dealers as opposed to the drug dealers in the corner. Also talked about like being vegetarian and not eating meat. He talked about like, wearing a condom and the dangers of like, unprotected sex. Yeah, and even just the first track on the whole album is called My Philosophy. The vibe on By All Means Necessary is much, much different from the vibe on Criminal Minded that came out the year before. Yeah, it's night and fucking day.
yeah, and it's R.I.P. to DJ Scott LaRock. Definitely a big loss in hip hop, and like you said, it definitely impacted this album. I haven't really heard this one in a long time, but I definitely remember the impact KRS-One had, and he's definitely one of the first hip hop artists to speak on social issues and talk about things that people in the hood need to know, or people of color need to know and should follow. Like you said, about the social issues, the corruption, the safe sex, also the crack epidemic that was going heavy in the 80s. So he touched on a lot of those important topics that I feel like were necessary, and he influenced a lot of other artists that came out after him, to kind of touch on similar things that are going on. So shouts out to to Boogie Down, KRS-One, and the whole crew, everybody that was involved in that project. And there's a reason why, like, kind of going back to LL Cool J, how we're still talking about KRS-One 30, 40 years later, and his messages, still ring to this day, and they have a lot of meaning, to the culture. So definitely, it's good to have balance, and it's good to see how he evolved from the first album, how it was criminal minded, to the kind of like the not the opposite, but kind of like touching on different topics on the second album, and then also like the cover, how it pays homage to Malcolm X in that famous picture when he's holding that AK and he's looking out the window because he feels like people are coming to get him and kill him. So you just definitely something that's needed, and we need more artists that are talking about some of these topics, because people need to know what's going on. They need to know the real, and not like everything is not just fun and games and party and bullshit all the time. Sometimes You need to have a balance, and you need to know like you need to have knowledge as well. Knowledge is key for a lot of things in life. So shouts out to KRS running the crew for putting this out and shifting the culture and opening the eyes for a lot more artists to come.
Yeah, and it's even in his name. Knowledge reigns supreme over nearly everyone.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's so many joints in this album from My Philosophy, Stop the Violence, Illegal Business. Illegal Business for 1988 definitely stood out. Yeah, like who the fuck in 1988 was making songs about how the government are the real drug dealers, the government are the real bad guys, and they don't want you to do your drugs because they want you to do their drugs? Yeah, nobody else was doing that shit back then, man.
Yeah, and it kind of sparked like Public Enemy and a lot of other groups after that start,
Yeah,
followed
no,
suit.
Public Enemy was kind of out around the same time, so they were kind of like neck and neck with each other in that sense.
Yeah, but I mean, like they kind of like fed off each other and kind of like sparked like a movement, toward talk about government and things that are affecting the hood.
Also,
So,
Part Time Suckers is dope, and Jimmy's pretty self explanatory. But yeah, it's definitely a different vibe from
well,
Criminal
people
Minds.
these days don't know what a Jimmy is, but people in the '80s and '90s, Jimmy or Jimmy Hat is another name for condom. So that's yeah, just what people used to say back in the days.
Yeah, but definitely a different vibe from Criminal Minded because Criminal Minded, that's like when Boogie Down Productions was really beefing with the Juice Crew, and that's the album that has the Bridges Over and 9mm and
Yeah.
all that jazz.
It's
So yeah,
kind of a bittersweet song, like the bridge is over. It sucks that they're making fun of Queens and Queens Bridge, but at the same time, it's one of the best hip hop songs of all time. Like it's that dope. It's
also
one of the
another
best
good
songs.
diss. Also another good diss. How can we forget?
Oh yeah, definitely forgot about that one. Yeah, that's definitely
Yeah,
before
it's another classic.
no Vaseline. Yeah, that was one of that was probably yeah.
Also, it's funny getting into LL real fast. LL and Ice T had beef back then too, right? Like during that bad period. That's when LL Cool J and Ice T had beef.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, because Ice
Like
T,
on like crime.
yeah, because Ice T even dissed him on that song "I'm Your Pusher." He briefly dissed him in that.
Yeah, I see it was a G man. He's still talking shit to this day.
Yeah, he's still talking shit to this day. Wasn't he like
He was making fun. He was making fun of Lenny Kravitz the other day. Lenny Kravitz said that
celibate? Yeah, he's
he was
celibate.
9 years celibate or whatever,
Yeah.
and then I was like, "What the hell is wrong with this dude?" I thought that was funny.
Hey, it's his dick, his business, but that's another story. But probably a big reason why this album switched up so much compared to the one the year before was because of Scott the Rock's murder. That probably definitely struck a nerve with him and maybe made him want to
Oh yeah,
change
of
things
course.
up and mellow out
Yeah,
on the shit he was doing before.
yeah, definitely. That definitely impacted.
But yeah,
Had an effect.
KRS One definitely a pioneer in the game. This album is one of the reasons why, and this album was pretty much the start of him calling himself the teacher.
Hmm. Makes sense.
Yeah, and he has a great song that came out a couple years ago about the election called "Don't Fall for It," and yes, it is very relevant to the situation we're in right now.
Yeah, we need more artists like KRS One these days.
Yeah, instead of artists who cater to the corporate bullshit and cater to the industry bullshit, we need more artists who will call out the evils of some of that shit.
Yeah, we need more rebels.
Yeah, definitely. But let's get into our next anniversary. I know you're really looking forward to this one, as this past week marked the 27-year anniversary of Wu Tang's second album, Wu-Tang Forever. And this album was a double album, one of the first double albums that came out during that period, that
Yep.
mid 90s period. And I have to say, it definitely feels like a double album. Great album. They definitely did their thing on this, but I have to be honest, it is long as fuck. And
Yeah,
you
it is.
feel every single last minute of it.
It was definitely dope. Yeah, this 27 tracks between the two, the two CDs is a lot of songs, especially during that
Yeah,
time. That wasn't really like a lot of people didn't, like you said, a lot of people didn't come out with double albums. I want to say who the first one was with the double album.
Pac. I think Pac.
Oh yeah,
I think it was Pac the year before. Yeah, Pac with All Eyes on Me.
yeah, all albums. I mean, it kind of started a trend in hip hop. We had a lot of double albums at that time. I
And then there was
remember.
Life After Death, literally right
Yeah, Life
before
After
this, like
Death.
literally
Yeah.
like 2 months before this.
So definitely a trend. This is one of the better double albums because a lot of times double albums like they're not necessary, But this one definitely was dope. Like the first disc, I would say that was my favorite. It has like pretty much every song on there is a dope joint, classic. And yeah, man, this was definitely a well received project because after coming off of the classic, the first album, they followed up with this, and everybody, did their thing. Everybody stood out, and this was like peak Wu Tang, I would say. But everybody was on their A game, and this kind of was like the launching pad to the Wu Wear clothing line. Because I remember right after this album dropped, that's when Wu Wear became mad popular, and everybody was rocking Wu Wear back in those times. So yeah, definitely a dope album, classic album. Has probably top five hip hop songs of all time on this album with Triumph. That song, when that song came out, man, no chorus, just nine people just spitting bars, back to back for
And
the
that
whole
song,
track. Like it's ridiculous, man.
and I'll say this: that song definitely was not 3 minutes.
No, definitely not. That song was
It
what,
was
what
long as
almost six
fuck.
minutes long.
Yes,
And it
sir.
doesn't even feel like it because everybody just murdered that song, even from like Inspector Deck coming on and just setting the tone. And then Meth came in and destroyed it all the way to the end where Ghost and Raekwon close it out. Like just everybody did their thing, even the spoken word shit, the Risen and Master Killer doing their thing. Like just everything, ODB, just everybody on this song did their thing, man. Like and that's just like one, like I said, it's one of the best hip hop songs of all time. Definitely, I would say top five, top 10 of all time. And yeah, and then just like I'll let you get some of your other tracks in before I go in, but yeah, definitely, Triumph definitely set the tone for this album.
One of my favorite tracks on the whole album, honestly, is "A Better Tomorrow."
Yeah, it's pretty dope.
You can't drink your life away, smoke your life away, fuck your life away, because your seeds grow up the same way. Yeah, they body that one. They fucking body that one. Severe Punishment is also dope. As High as Wu Tang Get, that's
Yeah.
also mad fire. For heaven's sake.
Oh yeah, that's a dope, no, dope one. I like Reunited to kind of like set the tone, set it off, set the album off with
Also,
that
The
beat.
City. Yeah, The City was dope. Yeah, they have a lot of good shit on the album. But like I said a few minutes ago, it's just too fucking long and just honestly, it just drags in certain parts.
Yeah,
And while I do like it, I can't say that I like it more than 36 Chambers. I'm sorry, I can't.
yeah. 36 Chambers with what 10, 12 songs maybe, if that. I don't think it was.
Yeah, and everything just hits so hard and it goes by so much faster. Yeah, I can't say that I like it more than 36 Chambers, although it is still very good and I do like what they put into it. I can't say that I like it as much as 36 Chambers.
Yeah, between the both CDs, it's like you're coming out an hour and a half, almost 2 hours worth of music, bro. That's a long time. This is pretty much two albums with this project. Because
Yeah, it
this was
is. Yeah,
'97
it
when the
is.
Wu Tang the first one came out '93, right?
Yeah, 93.
Yeah, so
And then
that's
in between that time they had all their solo projects like Ghostface's album and ODB's album, Method Man, and also
yeah,
Raekwon,
all the solo
etc.
project. Ghostface, yeah. So yeah, it made sense because all of them were solo artists, were starting to branch off and do solo things after the first LP. So it made sense for them to drop so many tracks because we wouldn't get another Wu Tang album for a few years after that. I want to
I
say maybe what 2000, two
I think
thousand one.
didn't they have one in 99? I know they had Iron Flag in 2001, but I think they had one in 99 too.
There was the one with the gravel pit and what was the other song? The jump off. Remember that song?
I want to say yes. I don't think the one in 99 like did as well. I think it was
Nah, it
called the
didn't. It
W.
didn't do good.
I think it was called the
Yeah,
W.
the W. Yeah, the Iron Flag one. That's the one that had the gravel pit and the jump off on there. That was like kind of like they're coming back. But yeah, it was like a 2 or 3 year drought of them dropping a group project. So it was kind of necessary, I guess, at that time. They wanted to drop a whole bunch of shit so that way they can just focus on their solo careers. It was definitely a classic. Like this whole album, like it's so many bangers on here. We got Older Gods. It's Yours was another big single that was on here. It's just one that I really liked as well. Impossible, where they when they're telling a story, and then at the end, Ghostface and Raekwon is like, "Yo, this is not a real story, but this is just something to think about." I love that concept of that record, and it was a dope song, and yeah, man, just the whole album, like, definitely. you remember when this album came out, and like growing up when in high school when this song came out. I'm sorry, when this album came out. You remember when this came, the impact that it had on the culture and how everybody was listening to this for that whole summer when it was out. And like I said, how they influenced the culture with the Wu wear, people rocking those clothes back then. It was just a dope time in hip hop.
Yeah, it was a really dope time, and that was a really fun summer. This album was definitely one of those reasons why. And even though, like, it wasn't on the same level commercially, like, a lot of like the Bad Boy stuff was at the time, and even with Triumph not even having a hook, this album still debuted at number one of the Billboard charts, and still
Yeah.
sold, yeah, like 600,000 copies in the first week. And to this date, is their most successful album, their best selling album.
Yeah, Wu Tang had a cult following, especially at that time. Like Wu Tang, a lot of people follow him, but at that time, like you couldn't, like everybody at school had the Wu Tang logo on their backpacks.
Oh,
Everybody had
yeah.
the clothes and the music. Like it just all went together. And the one thing I respected about them is that they didn't do the commercial shit like everybody else did. They came out with their first album, which was underground and hardcore, and then they kind of stuck, to that same formula on the second album. They didn't do commercial shit and do party records and things like that. They kind of stuck to their lane, and they got rewarded for it. People received this album well, and then they went on to do bigger and better things as solo artists. So definitely, I would say a milestone in hip hop. I remember when this album dropped, and the feeling like that came from this album and this project being out.
Yeah, this album definitely did work. Definitely a special time in the culture, a time I'll never forget. I have a lot of nostalgia for that summer of '97 for a lot of reasons. And yeah, shout out to Wu Tang and every member for this project they put together. Even if they'd already like had solo success afterwards and maybe weren't like keen on maybe getting back together for the album, they still got together regardless of all that and put together what we got. And I'm not hating. I think Raekwon said he doesn't consider this album a classic. I think on DJ Vlad once he said that
It
it was a
doesn't.
classic to him. Yeah, I think he said that once.
I think to me it's still a classic. Just off of the impact alone,
And I
the
think
songs were
And
pretty
I
dope.
think, and from what I remember, I think I watched that Wu Tang documentary on Showtime a couple years ago, and they were talking about the whole process of making the album. And yeah, it was definitely not the same vibe compared to the first album. It definitely felt like there was like more tension, there was like more, I guess, personal shit going on compared to when 36 Chambers was made. But despite all that, they still pulled this off. So you got to give it to them.
Yeah, they still did. It's just tough, man, because after the first album, pretty much almost every member came out with a solo album. Think of it like that. Like everybody considers themselves a boss. So they came out with the group album first, and they all got on. Now all of them are solo artists, and they're doing their thing by themselves without the group. And then having them come back into a group, it kind of like felt like a lot of egos were coming into play for that second
Oh,
album. And I feel like that's probably why they kind of felt that way.
it's funny, around the same time, the same thing happened with New Edition. Because New Edition went on to have like solo projects after they kind of split up for a little while. And then when they got back together for that Home Again album, their egos were like running out of control. And that whole tour was a
Yeah.
shit show to the point where like half the group dropped out halfway through and they were like almost getting into fights with each other on stage. So yeah, I could definitely see how that would become a problem.
Yeah, just look at how big Raekwon's album, Cuban Links, how big that album was, how big the Iron
Iron
Man
Man.
album was, how big Method Man's Takao album was. Like
And
all
the
those
shit he was doing
albums were
with
big
Redman.
albums.
And also, not to mention the shit Method Man was doing with Redman at the time too.
Yeah, so there was just everybody on ODB, Liquid Swords with Jizza, and all these other people had their own things going on. Even RZA branched off and did his own shit, Bobby Digital and shit like that. Like all of them did like their own thing. Capadonna dropped solo albums. Like pretty much everybody in the crew, you know, did their own thing, and then for them to come back into a group, that would make sense to me at least. Why, like they had some tension, putting that album together.
Yeah, but even with that tension and even with that personal shit maybe going on, they still put together a masterpiece. And if you can still pull that off, even with that kind of shit in the way, then you're a legend. And that's what all these
Yeah,
dudes
for
are.
sure.
All right, but King Kong, before we get out of here, let our listeners know how they can follow us on social media and also how they can listen to past episodes of the podcast.
Yeah, if you want to check out past episodes, you can visit shiftingtheculturepodcast.com. You can learn more about us, check out last episodes, and also learn more about the podcast. And if you want to follow us on social media, you can catch us on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook at Shifting the Culture Podcast.
Yeah, check us out, holler at us, and let us know if you disagree with some of our points. We'd be more than happy to discuss them with you and debate with you in a peaceful matter, that is. And yeah, regardless, we're going to be here for a long time to come, breaking down this culture of hip hop, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and what we think of that good, bad, and the ugly. And until next time, for King Khan, this is Conscious Kurt with another edition of the Shifting the Culture podcast. Take care, enjoy the rest of your week, and remember, whether you are an old school head or a new school head, always and never ever forget to respect the fucking culture. Have a good one, guys.
Peace.